It's dark in here, I guess.
I was going to say your lighting's a little
Yeah,
bit
you
off.
have.
Me
I got all
too.
the lights
Yeah, I
on.
got my good tie on.
Okay, team, we're streaming live now. So on
All right.
comment, just to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I got all the lights on and the blinds are up, but it gets dark in here.
All right.
Or the
Why don't
cameras.
we,
No?
And I just, so you know, thanks to Mark, I got the legitimate timer working. Just bear with me because I'm doing kind of his job and my job today. So, but he's with us to get us going.
appreciate it. Amir, we're streaming live.
Yes, no, I heard that.
And then Mark, you still, can I go ahead and get my PowerPoint ready since that's before public comments?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, do that.
Stand by.
But when you're done with the PowerPoint, close it all the way out. I don't know how many you have. Is it just one?
Thank goodness.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's easy.
Today. But now I'm seeing how this all,
Yep.
these puzzle pieces work. So like, boy, oh boy, you know, like, by the way, did you see that email, what they want to do? Can we do a brown bag with 800 people on a Zoom? What Joe wants to do?
Yeah,
Anthony?
of
Mark?
course. We can do anything.
Bueller? 800, wow. Okay.
Yeah, the standard license that we have goes up to 5, but we have one license that goes up to 1,000. So we just have to add that to the right account.
I was hearing you talk to Mark about, Ron about the swapping licenses. And so, yeah.
So Amir and Jason and anybody else, whoever you see in the attendee list that you want moved over as a panelist, just let us know. I know Tom Leibel,
Can be moved over.
Todd, I don't know.
Mark, Jason, Amir, I'll be back in 1.5 minutes. But this is Paul. I'm now that upper left-hand blue thing that says, well, there's my name. It's I'm under the timer, and that's how I'll be the whole meeting.
Okay.
We'll be right back in 1.5 minutes.
So let's.
Jason's a co-host, so you can move people over, Jason, right?
I'll give it a shot.
I'm looking at the list.
Let's move Bill Pierce over, please. And
He's already in.
He's already moved over.
yeah, good. Thank you.
The only 2 attendees still there are Sod and Joe Hauer. Oh, and Bosker. Bosker just joined. So the way you move them over is you go to the attendees tab and you click on more and then promote to panelist.
Gotcha.
Hey, Bosker.
Hey, Mark.
I didn't know I was supposed to dress up for this. Actually, I'm dropping off in a couple.
No problem.
I would just like to use your quote for later. You said, we can do anything.
Yeah. We could send a man to the moon.
Or a rover to the Mars.
Or the space station.
Oh, good morning. This is Bill Pierce. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bill.
Yes. Hey, Bill.
I'm never quite sure with Boeing. They keep changing what we can do every day.
No, we can hear you and we can see this.
Okay, Anthony, you got it?
Yeah, I'm moving
Alright.
people.
And you got the streaming and the recording, so you guys good to go? Give
Great.
me a holler if you need anything, all right?
Thanks, Mark.
We're just waiting for another couple of minutes to start. So bear with us.
As I say, for the district votes, to reminder to turn off your Cisco so it doesn't interrupt any discussions, your Cisco Jabber.
Yes.
Amir,
All right.
I'm
It's
back.
10:30. Thank you, Paul. You're back. Good. So I guess we can start. Good morning. It's 10:30, and this is Amir Deshbafsa, and I wanted to welcome everybody to our first Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee Zoom meeting. Amir Deshbafsa, as I said, and I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Engineering and Permitting Office. So before we start, I have to go over our housekeeping remarks. So just bear with me for a couple of minutes as I'm going through it. Good morning again, and thank you for participating in our remote meeting for Permit Streamlining Task Force Subcommittee meeting. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation. We ask that everyone be patient as we navigate this together. We have two formats for participation: the Zoom web application as well as teleconference. Before we begin, I want to review some guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. These are very important, so I ask that you pay close attention. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell or desk phone. This will ensure that we're not hearing any feedback or causing interruption during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for board members, which that case would be us, and the South Coast AQMD staff will be placed on mute by the host. That means you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. After each agenda item, we will announce for public comments if necessary. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raised hand button. This will signal to the host that you would like to provide comments and you will be added to the list. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raise hand button on the bottom of the screen. For those calling in using the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to comment. Your name will be called when it's your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Please note, you can hang up or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. Please adhere to the speaker time limits. Please treat others with courtesy and civility, and respect the public meeting process. Rules prohibiting the use of signs or posters remain in effect for the video participation. Profanity, discriminatory comments, or obscene gestures is prohibited. Disorderly, unruly, or aggressive behavior that infringes upon the rights of others or disrupts the good working order of the meeting is also prohibited. Any violations of the above rules can result in your mic being muted, your video feed shut off, or you being dropped from the phone or the Zoom meeting lines. So that concludes our housekeeping remarks. Let's do some introductions. First, I'm gonna start asking individual AQMD staff members who are participating at this point to identify themselves. So let's start with Jason, and I just want to also make an announcement that Jason is our new Assistant Deputy Executive Officer for Engineering and Permitting, and this is his first Permit Streamlining Task Force meeting. Welcome, Jason, and if you want to announce yourself, and you want to have a minute or so to say something.
No, thank you, Amir. Everyone else, I believe most of you I've dealt with, in other capacities around the district. So I really look forward to continuing to work with all of you in my new role, and and participating in the Permit Streamlining Task Force. Thank you.
All right, let's see, Bhaskar.
Hi, this is Bhaskar Chandan, Engineering and Permitting Manager in the refinery team.
Yeah, Bhaskar was just moved to his new position in the refinery and refinery team. before coming to the refinery team, he was the senior engineering manager for the chemical, energy, Bhaskar, what unit were you? Waste management and
Waste
energy.
management and energy teams, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I guess also we can add, since the last task force meeting is two of our managers have retired. Both Danny Luong and Ed Muehlbacher have
Right.
retired, if any of you had not heard that news. And we will be introducing the new managers.
Right. So the next one, let's see. Let me introduce Merrill Hickman. He's the new senior engineering manager in charge of the chemical and mechanical team. Merrill.
Good morning. I'm Merrill Hickman. I'm taking over the chemical mechanical ports team from Ed Muehlbacher. I'm 5 weeks in now, just getting my feet wet, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Right. Let's see. Tom Lebo, he's our new engineering manager in charge of the waste management and energy and bulk loading facilities.
All right,
Tom?
good morning, everybody. I'm replacing Bhaskar on Team A&E, Energy, Public Services, Waste Management, and bulk terminals. Look forward to meeting all of you and working with you.
All right. David Ono.
Good morning, David Ono, engineering manager for permit streamlining, reclaim, and NSR administration teams.
Mitch Heimoff.
I'm Mitch, the engineering manager, or I guess Amir didn't say it, but the old engineering manager for coding, printing, plating, military, and entertainment.
All right. And then Mr. Bill Thompson.
Yes, good morning. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the senior manager for operations. We handle gas stations, oil field facilities, and I'm also one of the old managers.
And I think on the district staff, we also have David Hawk on the meeting.
Good morning. My name is David Houck. I'm the supervising engineer of the permit streamlining team.
Is there anybody else from the engineering? Well, I guess we also have Rula Hajal.
Good morning. My name is Rula El Hajal, and I'm a senior administrative secretary in engineering and permitting.
And Catherine Rodriguez.
Good morning. I'm Rula's co-partner, a senior administrative secretary to Amir Desbash.
And I also want to acknowledge and thank IM staff Mark Henninger and Paul Wright for making this meeting happening today. So is there anybody else from the South Coast AQMD staff that are on the line that we didn't call? Okay, if not, then I'm going to call on the subcommittee members. Let's start with Bill Pierce.
Hi, this is Bill Pierce from the Boeing Company.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I'm just going to say, I mean, sounds like a lot of moving around, but I wanted to say, because I've worked with both Jason and Tom Liebel in the past, but congratulations on that.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Lamar.
Hi, Amir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, sir?
I'm sequestering in place here, but like everybody else. I'm Bill Lamar. I'm the executive director of the California Small Business Alliance and a member of the Permit Streamlining Task Force. I guess for forever, I don't know. This is one of the oldest standing committees or task forces for such a long time. I see that there's a lot of activity going on over in Diamond Bar with the movement of staff in and out. It'll be strange getting back there if and when you guys ever open up and actually see everybody in person again. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And we're looking forward to seeing everybody again one of these days, hopefully by end of summer. We'll see if everything goes well, maybe we can open up the building sometime toward the end of the year. David Rothbard.
Morning, David Rothbard with Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts, and I also represent the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Works. So you hear me talk about wastewater treatment plants a lot. So thanks for having this Zoom meeting. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Mr. Finest Carlton. Good morning, Mr. Carlton. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope everything is well with you. Mr. Carlton, can you hear us? You're on mute right now. Well, I don't know if Mr. Carlton can hear us or not.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, hi, good. Good morning. How are you? It's been, I was just introducing you. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Finest Carlton with Carlton Engineers and Consultants, Inc.
Good morning. Like I was saying, it's been a while since I have seen you.
That is cool.
I hope everything is well and you're healthy and safe.
And we're staying sequestered.
Yes, that seems to be the what is happening lately. All right, is anybody else that I missed from the participants? All right. If not, we can start with our presentations. And so what I would like to ask is that if you guys could wait till we'll finish up with each presentation and then ask ask questions or making your comments, I would appreciate it. And if there is no questions, we can start with the process. Okay. Okay, I guess we can go to the ta-da. All right, so next slide, please. Next. So we have a couple of items on the agenda. We wanted to, I know it may look like something that we have discussed in the past meetings, but we wanted to come back and give you an update of where we are in the process with each one of these particular items and answer any questions and see if there's any concerns that we need to address. So with that, can we start the next slide, please? So first item on the agenda is pending application inventory update. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I'm waiting for it to load up. So as of end of May of 2020, our total inventory of our application is at 3337. We've been able to manage to keep the numbers below our 50% level that was set for us as a goal. And we're actually, I would like to state that, we at the end of the May, we were at the lowest number ever. But, considering all that is happening, there might be some reasons why it's going down the way it's going down at this point, but we can get into it in a little bit later. But as of right now, we're at 3337 and we're meeting our 50% reduction goal. Next slide, please. So the real number of inventory of applications that we have not taken any action on, these are the pending applications less PC issued, is at 2,457. Now we have set an internal goal to maintain this number between 2,250 and 2,500. And the number fluctuates each month a little bit, but I'm pleased to state that, we're doing our best and we're still below the goal that we have internally set for ourselves. Next slide, please. Inventory management during COVID-19. So as you know, our building is currently closed to public and majority of the staff at the district are currently teleworking. In our division in engineering and permitting, more than 80% of the staff are telecommuting each day. And because of the stay-at-home orders and the telecommuting process that we put in place, we had to initiate some special procedures to be able to continue with our work issuing permits. since we don't allow application folders to leave the office, we instituted an expanded version of a telecommuting process that we had put in place some time ago. So to deal with the process, with this stay-at-home process, we scanned all of our application folders that we had in our inventory, and we gave an electronic copy of the scanned applications to the engineers to review and to complete their evaluations at home. Once our engineers reviewed, was completed, and they finished with their evaluation, then they are forwarding an electronic copy of the evaluation and all their supporting documents back to their supervisors for their review and approval. And when approved, the supervisors who are actually in the office with the assistance of the administrative staff, they put the folders back together and complete the process. So far, the program has worked well. But we're with any project, we're reevaluating it at this point, and we're going to adjust it as necessary to see if we can improve our productivity and maintain the current level of production that we have in place right now. We're also closely monitoring the number of the applications that we are receiving. As you can imagine, there has been a reduction in the number of applications due to economic slowdown. The number of applications that we have received from January till end of May was about 10% less than the same time period in 2019. However, we have seen a drastic reduction in the number of applications that we have received in the month of June. So far there we have received less than 65% applications in comparison to the same time period in 2019. And we've looked back and we're trying to figure out why there is such a drastic, is it really because of this economic slowdown or not? But we know that in the past we would have received a lot more applications in May and June because of the increase in the fees that would have occurred in July. So it might be that we're getting less number of applications in May and June because we're not going to charge additional fees in July. And that might be one of the reasons for the reduction in number of the applications. Some other impacts from the stay at home: we are no longer doing field visits until further notice. We have canceled all of our face-to-face meeting, and we have postponed the CPP exam at this point. And this is in addition to all the Zoom meetings that we have to deal with. And as you can imagine, everybody's getting Zoom fatigue, but hopefully we can continue with the work that we're doing and maintain our number of applications below the levels that have been asked us to keep at. With that finishes up my portion of the presentation, and then I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions or comments. Hello? Oh, sorry. Okay.
We have
yeah.
one hand raised from Stephanie Bream.
Hi, Stephanie. Can you please identify yourself and ask your question?
Actually, it's Frances Keeler. I don't know how I got onto Stephanie's, but somehow I did. At any rate, good morning and thanks for holding the meeting. I have heard some feedback from some of our members at SEEB. I'm vice president of SEEB, as you know. And so some of our members that feel that since with the work at home that you are doing the teleworking, that some of the permit processes seem to be slowed down a bit, like not all the application files have been transmitted to the engineers that need to work on it. And so there's a lot of repetition in submitting information again that's already in the files. And obviously, since they're not going in, it's harder for them to get some of the files. So I don't know if you're doing anything to address that transmission so that all the permitted engineers have all of the information that they need.
Right. So let me just step back with our process. When we started this process, the instructions to everybody in the division was all the folders that was in positions of any engineer needed to be scanned, and that's what the instructions were, and that's what we put in place. Now, and that's what the report that I got, that everything has been scanned and we have finished up with our scanning process. Now, as applications are coming in, obviously we are scanning them and forwarding them to the engineers at the same time. But let us go back and double check, making sure that everything has been scanned. The reports, like I said, that I have received indicated to me that, there is nothing else to be scanned, because we actually brought in additional staff before we closed the building down to make sure we have finished scanning of all the application. If that has not happened, we'll look into it and make sure that is completed. Francis, like you, I'm very concerned with our production level and making sure that our permits are going out, and that's why we actually have put in place procedures to make sure we are dealing with the applications and we're dealing with our facilities as soon as possible. Now, as you may imagine, there may have been some issues, or there might still be some issues dealing with the people trying to reach out from home and doing their work at home. But we are actively trying to reevaluate and adjust as necessary to make sure we improve our productivity and make sure that the permits are issued in a timely manner. But thank you for the comment. Let me take a look into it, make sure that that is not what is happening on the floor. And if you know of any particular company, and if they want to contact me or Jason, we're more than happy to assist with the process.
Yeah, and I would just like to add on to that is we have 80% of our staff teleworking. Is that other 20% is in the office, maintaining social distance and using other precautions. But in addition to their normal roles, is they are now in a support role for those teleworking staff if they do need anything or any materials at home that they can scan or send to them. And then also on a case-by-case basis, staff still can come into the office to access any information they do need.
Right, and as part of our reevaluation, we're actually looking into if we can safely rotate staff, on a voluntary basis for short periods of time back to the office. So if they need to pick something up or they need to do something, or even help with the completion of their evaluation, we're reevaluating that process right now to make sure that can happen. As you can imagine, our biggest concern is the safety of the staff that are in the office right now. So we have to put a lot of things in place before we can bring in individuals to work. And even if anybody's coming to the office, we put them into a rigorous questioning process to make sure that they have not come in contact with with anybody that may have COVID-19, or if they know of anybody, or if they've been in contact with anybody. Like I said, we're taking a lot of precautions, and but at this point, if there's any concern with any permits not going out, I would like to hear about it so we can take some actions and readjust if necessary.
Great, great. Thank you all, and I will make sure our members know that to reach out if they're having an issue.
Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we have two more raising their hands. Bill Lamar.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Amir, going back to the turn down, or what appears to be a lessening of permit applications in June. I know we're still in the month, but do you have any plans to, or are you tracking, are these permit applications from big businesses or small businesses? And which sector, which industry sector are they coming from? I mean, are they restaurants? Are they manufacturing? And what type of manufacturing? I think that would be helpful. And then finally, what do you plan to do, if anything, about tracking permit renewals? I imagine those are going to be down, but I guess it's probably going to take you this year to find out, though, right?
Right. Yes. So as you know, we are active. We currently report back to the admin committee and the board on a monthly basis on the number of applications that we received and what percentage of those are small business versus large business. That's honestly, believe it or not, it takes a lot of our time and effort to put those numbers together for the both admin committee and the board meeting. But that's something our board wants, and that's what we're providing, and that information is being submitted to Jill, and Jill has those information as part of her presentations, both the admin committee and to the board meeting. Now, when it comes to the renewal process, yes, we're also tracking those very closely. However, the engineering and permitting is not involved in the actual tracking. That's something that our finance division is doing, because when you don't renew your permits, we're not involved in the process, and the facilities are in direct contact with our customer service in finance. So again, and also that information is also being presented as part of Jill's presentations to the admin committee and the board meeting. So yes, we are tracking both of those metrics. And what are we going to do about it? That's a good question. I don't know what can we do at this point. And if something is going to occur, that has to be a decision that is made at the board level with the change in policy. If we're going to assist the small businesses or the large businesses, those are outside our purview.
Well, I wasn't looking for anything right away, but I certainly I would think that you'd have to have that. I don't know. What do you have? Something on the order of 70-some thousand permits?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how valid is that number? Let's say it is 70. Is it now 60? Is it 69 and a half or something like that? I think you'd almost have to know that, those numbers, to operate effectively as an agency.
Right. So if you look at the presentation that Jill made on June 12th, and I'm not sure if you have it, and we didn't load it up for this meeting. Let's see. There was a graph number 16 that looked at the number of the expired permits. The problem, with closely tracking these numbers is that, even though your permit gets expired, you have 12 months to reinstate it. So even if we come up with a number and say, these are the number of the expired applications, or these are the number of the facilities that have not paid their annual fees, for annual operating fees, that doesn't mean that the facility is going out of business. That just means that, they haven't paid their fees yet. And even if they missed the deadline that they have to submit their application, they have so many months, almost like 12 months to reinstate that permit. So yeah, we do have that information. There is in that chart that Jill had provided, there is a 2017, 2018 chart, 2018 and 2019 chart. And then we also have what is happening in 2019 and 2020. And it seemed like for the all the way to February, it was sort of following the same trend, but it's, for the last 3 or 4 months, it has taken, an upward trend. But then again, we don't know if those permits are actually going, or for the facilities that are going out of business, or is it because they just haven't paid their annual renewal fees? And then also,
January, February, we're for all intents and purposes pre-COVID. I mean, our lawmakers hadn't taken any action at that time. So
right. So yeah, all I'm trying to explain is that, although we're tracking it, we really don't know if these permits are actually getting expired until 12 months from the date that we build them. So because at any point they could come back and reinstate the permit. Now, you also asked about, I found my presentation here. You asked about the small business versus other. So during January to May period, number of applications that we received, 7% of them were for small businesses and 93 were from the other. And during the same time period back in 2019, small businesses were roughly around 6% of the total number of applications that we had received. So that's based on the data that we have been able to collect so far.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But if you want a copy of the presentation, we're more than happy to send you a copy if you want.
No, maybe the group would like to have it.
We can send out a link.
Yeah, we can send out a link
to the group, and it will continue to be reported to the board and admin committee.
Of course, we're going to be dark in July, but we're going to have the same numbers, updated numbers for both for admin and the board for their August meetings.
All right, moving on. David Rothbard has his hand up.
Thank you. Just want to take the opportunity to thank staff for the response, especially during COVID. We had 2 situations of quick turnaround requests for permit applications. And I want to thank Jason specifically and the staff for turning around 2 permits very quickly. So I want to say what you're doing right now in response to COVID is working, at least in my experience, and want to thank everybody for their efforts.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And I can probably add that, as we move through this COVID process response is, we do try and identify certain projects, that need to take priority, hand sanitizer, manufacturing, operations like those, to see that they get the immediate, attention that they deserve. Okay, I do not see any more hands up.
Okay, with that, then if there's no questions or comments, I'm going to turn the presentation to Mr. David Ono, and he's going to talk about status update on our application, on our permit application dashboard. David?
All right, need to unmute. Good morning. Apologize, my office is apparently darker than it was the last time I went on Zoom, and I'll see if I can fix that later. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pending permit application status dashboard. I had given a presentation, I guess it was in May, to the governing board, and we also gave one at the last permit streamlining task force meeting. And we've had a little bit of updates since the last task force meeting, and we covered a lot of it in the governing board meeting, but I wanted to highlight some pieces here and give an opportunity for feedback to our task force. So if we go to the next slide, please. I had shared this previously, but this is just for those who haven't seen it before, and maybe to reiterate as a refresher for those who've seen it. Our dashboard is accessible through our Find application. The Find application was updated last year to add a geographical component, which is pretty nice. So if you're looking for particular activities, if you're a community member in your area and you look around, you see the little dots there, and then you can see facilities that are nearby. And by clicking on those, you'll find access to the equipment that's at that location. And now, since we've opened up our dashboard to be viewed externally, if you click on those, then you'll be able to access the dashboard or the additional details within the dashboard. Click, please. So this is just to help you kind of see what happens in our Find application and looking at a particular facility. Then you're presented with the equipment list, which then if you click on the blue numbers, that would take you directly to the dashboard, and that's based on application number. And the descriptions of those applications are beneath that number. And that's we believe is the quicker way to get access to the information using a tool that's already available to everybody, the Find application. Next slide, please. I didn't put all the details from the dashboard because we covered it in our last permit streamlining task force meeting, but I will describe again the main features of the dashboard, which is a timed elapsed indicator and an application status indicator. The time elapsed one, it puts like a green, yellow, red indicator indicating how close we are to our health and safety code commitments of 180-day turnaround for permits. There are a couple additional gauges for once you get the permit to construct, then that timeline changes a little bit, and there are some different timelines for Title V. So then that gauge in terms of the numbers might change, but it's be roughly like 75% to 100% in terms of getting to yellow and red indicators. We also at the bottom have the application status indicator, which indicates as their application is going through the process, whether or not there's anything that might be holding the application up, something that might be awaiting attention from the facility side. If there's an incomplete application and the engineer needs more information, they may have put a request out for more information, and that then would be highlighted to indicate that we're waiting for something for the facility. If there's something internal within the district that's might be causing a little bit of additional work, like maybe a source test or a secret evaluation, then that would highlight with our district logo would be highlighted. We also have the horizontal status bar, which kind of shows like the big picture overall progress of the application from receipt, assignment, deemed complete, and whether or not there's a permit to construct or a permit to operate issued, and then finally when it's closed. I will add that when I made this screenshot, we did add an additional feature now so that the closed milestone also has a date associated with that. Next slide, please. So I mentioned we made that little change to put the dates on the closed. When we rolled this out in last year and discussed it with the Permit Streamlining Task Force, we did have a bunch of software updates that we were putting in place before we made it external. We wanted to make sure we clean up some of the data in terms of consistency. There are some, we wanted to harmonize the terminology that we use so that it's easier to understand. A lot of the, what we call intermediate steps in the process, there were more IT centric in terms of it meant something maybe more to the software side of things, but maybe not to an external person. So we filtered that out so that when you view it externally, you'll see kind of more plain language in terms of where the information is at. With respect to trying to be as transparent as possible, we still share everything that's on our internal systems, but we wanted to describe it so it kind of made more sense. And then you can follow along whether or not it's something that's like post-processing, like going to the mail in the process of getting mailed or entered, things like that are in what we call our diary, and it's they're available to see. But if you looked at it prior to our latest adjustments, it might have had some strange 6-digit code that it would just create more questions than answers. So we put those enhancements in place before we released it, and we think we have a pretty good product now. What I put here is the direct link to find, in case you weren't familiar with it. It's sort of directly available on our main webpage, but you have to find the find link. It's in the horizontal bar there. But just for quicker references for those who are on the call, this is the link that you would use to get directly into the find application, which then eventually will get you to our dashboard by looking at the equipment list for a particular facility. Next slide, please. We had shared in I think we had a meeting December or November last year, and we had taken a snapshot of what the dashboard was tracking as of October. And then at that time, we had shared some statistics in terms of like what we think the capabilities are and how it can help us. And so when we looked at the snapshot in October, we found that maybe about 40% of the applications were what we call like they're in process state. They weren't waiting for any additional information or additional work steps that need to be evaluated before we could proceed. And the remaining 60% was split about half and half between things that were waiting additional attention from the facility and things that were waiting additional attention from internally within the agency or within our various departments. when we saw that, we try to focus on those areas that we can maybe remove some hurdles. There were some things that were being held up maybe because of some policy decisions. We noticed that a lot of the source testing areas there's a lot more than we thought that it would call some attention to. So we focus our attentions on trying to attack, some of the source testing. I'll say backlog. I don't really want to say backlog, but pent up applications there, to streamline that and to address some of the policy decisions that freed up a bunch of permitting activity. Now, in all fairness, the dashboard was only internal at the time, it wasn't external. So we focused on the things that we could control. And then you see in April 2020, when we took the snapshot before our board meeting, you see the distribution changed a bit. A lot more applications were available to be processed, which is our ultimate goal. We want to maximize those that are available to be processed. And in terms of how many that were waiting district action versus those awaiting facility action, it was more 3 to 2. So we closed ours down quite a bit, and we're hoping now by going externally and then giving it another way for facilities to track things that are waiting on their end, because a lot of times some things may seem like it's taking longer, but they may not realize that it's because we're waiting for information from facilities, and getting people in the habit of looking at these, and maybe not necessarily waiting on phone calls. You can have quick links to your dashboard for the applications you're working on, and then see it, hey, has the status changed? You can see that right away without having to wait for a phone call back or email correspondence. And we're thinking that this would then help make that part of the pie go down, and then the in-process expand even more. Next slide, please. So this was the snapshot we shared at the last meeting to show you where a large portion, where the larger contributors were towards where applications might be kind of in a hold state. And the largest one on the facility side is, I think, as we would have expected, is on additional information requests. We call it AI requests. That's about 14%. And I think we mentioned then, we noticed that there's, it's not a big number, but they can have, it's in combination, like policy review was around 3%, but that also could hold up applications that are associated with that. And those are related applications. So then those combined, it makes for a larger portion of applications that can be addressed by strategically focusing on trying to review those policy areas. The source testing also being something that we were looking at. And as a reminder, we do have that separate task force that's geared towards streamlining source testing reviews. Next slide. Now I'm going to maybe flip back and forth between these because there's a lot of detail here, and I didn't want to put it all on one slide, but you'll see the additional information request has gone down. So that's good news on the facility side. And I think that a large part of that is because we had access to it, we're more focused on it. We asked our engineers to update each of their applications on a weekly basis. And when they see that, it'll trigger a reminder that I'm still waiting for something for the facility. If it seems like it's getting kind of too long for that response, they can initiate a conversation to try to get that information back. Our policy review has gone down. You can see that's 1% now. It was at 3%. And the related application has gone down and concurrent with that. So by attacking those, we cleared those out. The additional information went down. We have more applications that are being processed. Source testing has gone down a little bit. And what we see is that the awaiting construction has gone up, which tells us that we've processed a lot more PCs. And so now they're, even though it says awaiting facility action, it's the awaiting construction is not necessarily something that a facility has, direct control over, but it shows that it's not something that's being held up necessarily. It's something that's within both parties' control. And that's what we're hoping to get out of the dashboard. And I think our early indicators is that it's successful in that endeavor. And we're looking at more ways to break the data down so that we can get more efficiencies in our overall process. We go to the next slide, please. So with respect to our general overall goals for the dashboard, we wanted to use it as a way to increase our transparency and as another way to help communicate with the applicants and with the community, since it's now through the find. Interested, community members can, if they're, tracking activities at particular facilities, they can get a look in to see, what's going on in terms of new applications and the status along with that. It gives a visual indicator of where an application is in the process and specifically if there's an action that's awaiting, which is, I think, a good communication tool. It provides a quick feedback on whether something is on track or maybe needs some attention to put it back on track. And another important piece internally, it helps us allocate our resources because if we see maybe just the way the nature of projects work, maybe a whole bunch of them are kind of put on hold a little bit because this additional review is needed for evaluating risks for toxics or something like that. That means that that engineer really has maybe some additional time that another engineer who doesn't have that same benefit, or I'll say benefit, or attention, then we can shift some of the applications around to make sure that there's an equal load and we can get more applications processed that way. It helps not just with shifting of applications within a team, but if, to Bill's point, if we find that certain industries, especially with the COVID situation, maybe they have an increased activity, maybe other industries have a decreased activity, maybe within our engineering teams, we can shift applications or resources to get staff reassigned to focus on those areas that become, I'll say hotspots in terms of permitting activity. So from that perspective, we think it's very successful, and we think we're going to get more out of the use of this as we get more and more familiar with it. So that's into this part of the presentation.
All right, before we open it up to questions or comments, I want to actually bring up two items. This came out of one of our discussions with another group. We were presenting the dashboard, or they had some questions after they actually had the opportunity to work with it. The amount of information that is being provided on the find is actually quite large. So there's multiple screens. So on the first screen that you will see, it gives you information, basic information about the facility, the engineers assigned, why, basically the speedometer, how long we've had it, the reason it's being held or being worked on, and also has the last diary on that screen. Now, the comments that we have received, that would be great if you guys can show us why the application is not being worked on, and you have identified us, the facility, as being the responsible party. So all you have to do is go page down on the screen, and that the second screen that we have gives you a detailed diary of everything that has happened to that application from the moment that we have received the application. And the last diaries are the ones that causing that is being used to light up the indicators. So that was item one. And also I wanted to also acknowledge our partners in IM, both Zinchen, Saad Karam, and their staff. If it wasn't for their collaboration with us in developing these programs, we'll still be in the initial phases. So I just want to give a shout out to their help and their assistance in developing this dashboard. All right, so are there any questions, comments?
We have one raised hand, David Rothbart.
Yes, David.
Thank you for the presentation, and I want to thank staff as well. They did a great job. I've used the Find tool since the enhancements have been made, and it is very user-friendly. It gives you more information, so I'm very happy with the interface, and it provides useful information. My only suggestion would be, it seems to be a little finicky if you don't know your specific address. If I know my application number or my facility number, very simple. But if I happen to be looking for a facility by address and I don't get it exactly right, it's a little finicky. So that would be my only wish list item, not a big deal, but just feedback for you for your consideration. But in the presentation, David was talking about source testing, which is one of my pet peeves at the moment. And it's, if you haven't heard me get on my soapbox, it's mainly that the different groups have different standards for source testing. And it's really a question for Amir of what I'm advocating in the Equate group is to have some meeting of the minds from different groups to say what is necessary for compliance versus ARs versus 2588, and have something that's transparent, because there isn't anything written down anywhere. When you issue a permit, people follow the permit and think that's all they have to do, and that's not necessarily the case. So my question is, if we happen to mesh all this together, is it going to slow down the permitting process by going through source test engineering first, rather than kind of the separate processes you have going on now? I'm just curious if this is going to cause more problems.
Well, not necessarily. I think, it's and I've been participating in some of the Equate meetings. I think it's a right direction that everybody's moving toward. And you're right, the requirements for an AER might be different from the requirements from the permitting staff, to moving the permit from a permit to construct to a permit to operate. But I think the differences is mainly in the procedures and the number of samplings that needs to be done. If when the protocol is being approved, that protocol will have, at least the comments, hopefully from after the review of the senior the source testing engineers, would be that you need to do the followings. But so will it slow down the permitting? We don't know. We haven't done it. We don't know yet. So hopefully it won't. But if it does, then maybe we can put some things in place that make sure that doesn't happen. But for now, I don't know if it's going to slow it down. And but that's a very good comment, David. Did you bring that up also during the Equate meetings?
I'm trying to, as far as get all the parties to sit down together and come up with a unified approach.
Okay.
So it's something I've been talking to Tracy Goss and Sarah about. So the next Equate meeting should be in about a month. So I'll bring it up then as well.
Right. So what I will do from our end, we can contact, Tracy and the other staff who are working on the Equate part, and see what is being done and how, if they are foreseeing a slowdown as far as a review of the of the source test. Because obviously, we have our mandates, they have their mandates, and hopefully we have to be able to meet someplace in the middle, making sure we, just because they're doing something different doesn't slow down another part of the program that we have at South Coast.
Great.
That's very good.
And just to expand on that, as a former source tester myself, it's just that initial part of the process when the group first receives a source test report or a source test protocol. One of the first things you got to look at is what is the requester, either a staff from AER or in permitting, what are they asking to be reviewed? Because we might have a report that's 2 inches thick, but they only want to look at NOx. I understand what you're asking for is kind of clarifying that process. Can we handle that up front? It's a similar process to permitting in that when you get these source test reports, we don't always have everything we need to knock out the review. I hope during this process we can kind of go through similar process. You can kind of understand some of the hurdles that they go through down in source testing regarding review of these tests in dealing with source testing companies.
Yeah, and also to add to that, David, as you know, our dashboard, actually we keep track of when we send information to our source testing folks to review. So
yep.
We're internally keeping track of it through our own dashboard. I know they're in the process of developing their dashboard, but we are also checking and making sure that we're also tracking the length of time that the source tests are with our source testing group, So even though they're still working, our dashboard is keeping track of it, and we're putting in. We are actually asking engineers to make sure to keep track of the time and when they submit information to source testing for review.
And while you're on that note, is there any discussion of merging those two efforts rather than having two different dashboards, just have one?
Right. So here's the problem that we had. Well, it's not a problem. When we developed this dashboard, we developed all the time indicators and the how we track time based on a permitting need versus what the need might be by the source testing group. So my understanding is that they are going to use the same format that we have developed, but we have been very upfront with them that, please make sure that, your timelines that you're developing for your time indicators meet your requirements and not the permitting requirements. So now with our time indicators, there's three separate time indicators. We have one time indicator that keeps track of the time that from the time we receive the applications until we pre-screen, from the time that we add the application complete, which would be at the end of the pre-screening, until a permit is issued. And if there's a permit to construct that has been granted, then the time that it takes from the permit to construct that has been granted until the final permit has been issued. So, we have put different logic into our process. And, what we consider to be green, yellow, and red might be different from what they may consider for their process. So, yeah, they can use it. I don't know how much work and effort would be to modify our current program to help them, or if it's going to be easier to just develop their own dashboard, learning from the experiences that we had developing ours.
Understood. Thank you.
I see Judy as well, somebody from York Engineering. I'm not sure who that is. Is that you, Judy?
Oh, here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, hi.
Hi, thanks. I just joined a little bit late. I just wanted to say thank you. The dashboard works really well. We use it very often, and it's very.
Oh, you're breaking up. Do we know what happened?
Oh dear.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Am I back?
Yes,
Oh,
you're back.
here we go, and I can start my video. Hi. So I just want to say thank you. It is really great having the dashboard. It works super well. And the processing is going much better, much quicker. It's very noticeable. So it's very much appreciated.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we have two more hands up.
It's
Terry. Is that Terry on?
Yes. Good morning, Terry.
Terry, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Hello, everybody. This is Terry Ann with Orange County Sanitation District. I have two questions. The first one's regarding the find. Yeah, I do appreciate all the changes, and it's a very useful tool. But somebody might have brought this up in the past about being able to see the actual permit. In the old find, that was a very useful feature. When you search for a permit, an application number, and then you could see the permit, so you know exactly which application it refers to. But the new one, the new find, you're not able to see that. Yeah, so I don't know if you could respond to that.
Well,
yeah,
I
I can. Yeah, it's the new find. It's there. It's what you do is you have to click on the box, and it's not so intuitive because you're used to clicking on maybe a link or the number. If it's a pending application, the number will take you to the dashboard. But if it's a permit, you have to click on within the box, and that will launch the permit. I don't know if you could try that concurrently if you have that up. But first time I saw that, that's what I thought also, and we gave that feedback to the individuals who were developing it. And I don't remember technically there was an explanation of why it was easier to do with the box. But once you figure that out, then it's you won't forget.
Okay, I'll give it a try during the meeting.
as you know, all of our Title V permits are also online. Well, 95% plus are online. So
Okay.
if you need the latest copy, and then, now that we're keeping track of those, all the previous versions are also available. So just wanted to
That'll
remind
be
you.
great. Okay. Yeah. So the next question is regarding Title V permit. So we recently found out that that you can issue new Title V revision to an expired Title V permit. So our Title V permits expired back in April, and we have a lot of pending applications, but we were told that since our Title V permits expired, no new Title V revisions can be issued. And that could greatly impact our construction projects. So we submitted our Title V renewal application back in 2018. So it's been almost 2 years and they have not been renewed. And now this could, impact, getting new permits. So we could start, these are major construction projects that could be impacted.
Okay, I understand. Let us take a look at it. But the reason we put that in operation is that, if the Title V permit is expired, we have two choices, because, it has expired, and, you're operating right now under an application shield because you submitted your renewal application on time. So we have two choices. We can either include the new projects under the Title V renewal application or just renew it quickly and then deal with your the new projects. Now, we try to separate the two processes as much as possible because the renewal process inherently it's easier to push through than a project, than new project, because it may get more comments, more looked at a little bit more closely, but when we put it to public notice. But I am concerned that you filed your applications in 2018 and we haven't granted a permit to you folks yet. So our goal has been, and the managers that are on the line can attest to it, we are doing everything that we can to keep the renewal process on time as we, as applications are received. Sometimes the applications come in late and then that puts more pressure on us. But let me take a look and see why the Title V permit has not been issued yet.
So, Terry, let me add is staff did approach it, make me aware of that. And as part of the dashboard process, we are trying to throw more resources at it. But they have made me aware of that and they're actively trying to get that out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so we may have to come back to you in case we have problem issuing our construction bid advertisement for some of these projects. But so far, we're trying to at least get the draft permit so that we have an idea what the permit's going to look like. That may be able to help us move forward with the project. But if that's not the case, then we may have to come back and address this.
Yeah. So Terry, why don't you work with Tom Liebel after the meeting? This meeting is over, and let me know how the progress is going, and then then we can see what we can do to get your project moving.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one other hand raised.
Howard.
Joe Hauer. Joe, go ahead. Let me unmute you.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I would also echo all the enhancements that have been made have been really helpful. And I guess it would also be nice if there was a way to find out on whose desk the application is. Say the permit engineer is done and it's moving its way up the food chain. It would be really nice if there was a way to figure out whose desk the application is sitting on virtually at this point, I guess.
Okay.
I have a couple others, but.
So the diary actually shows if the application has been transferred to the supervisors for the team to review.
Okay.
So if you look at the diary, that information should be there.
Okay, great.
That's that second page Amir was discussing. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it, and maybe it just because the applications I happened to look at were still logged at the permit engineer stage. I guess I'll also point out there's one little technical bug. If you click the download all equipment link when you've clicked on the facility where it says export all records, there's a little bit of a bug in that it locks it so that if you try, and it's got the data filtering turned on, but it only filters the first row. And it's fairly difficult to get it to stop doing that. What I found is I have to copy the first two rows, paste them down below, delete the first two rows. So you might have your IT folks look at that to see if there's a way to have that not happen.
Okay.
And I guess the third issue is that I've got some pending ERC applications that don't show up. And I'm wondering if those just aren't put in there initially or how that's handled.
Yeah, my understanding was that everything was going to show up, but let us take a look into it. Maybe there is a bug in the application that we are not including the ERC applications. You know, as much as we try to accommodate and cover all the bases, you know, these are living programs. So we may have missed something, but, you know, we're more than happy to go back and adjust and correct, you know, based on the comments that we received. So let us double check that. That's a very good question.
Yeah, we'll try and replicate it and we'll follow up with you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amir and Jason.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mayor, I wanted to follow up a little bit on Carrie Ann's comment. With respect to finding the permits, I went to look on because I wanted to refresh my memory on that. So there's two sections in that in find. One is the one I described, which is the equipment list, which gets you to the applications, and clicking on the application number launches our dashboard. There's a separate section that's called permits, and that's the one where you highlight the box, and when the box gets grayed, you click on the box, and then that pulls up your permit. Okay, so it's not from the equipment list where you click in the box. There's a separate section that refers to permits, and there, when you click on the box, it'll highlight. When you hover the mouse over it, it'll change color, and then you click in the box, and then that's what launches it. Hopefully that take care of that.
All right, thanks, David. And just wanted to let you guys know, if you don't know the link to find, and you know you don't remember it, you can also access the dashboard to our main permitting page through our website. So if you go to our website and you see the permitting, and you know, just click on the actual permitting button. Don't go to any of the download parts, you know, and then that takes us to our main permitting page. And the first paragraph has a direct link to the dashboard also.
Then,
Okay.
Terry, is your hand raised from before, or did you have another comment? Can't seem to.
Terry, you're muted.
Paul, I can't seem to unmute Terry.
Okay, well,
While we work on that, CYK has their hand raised. You can identify yourself or introduce yourself.
You're muted. Okay.
Hmm.
Hello? You're still muted.
I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
Oh, hi.
Fine now.
It's Carol Kaufman with Metropolitan Water District.
Oh, hi, Carol.
Yeah, it's great to see you all. And I just want to say also, as everybody else has, I really do appreciate the improvements and the dashboard, because it's really helped us to be able to track our permits. And I had a question more on the tail end of the side of the whole process. So if I look like at a recent permit application that was processed and it says it's closed now and it's gone to permit services, is there a way to possibly obtain that permit document electronically rather than having to wait for it to come in the mail? I've also looked on the document side and I don't see it posted yet. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to facilitate that part of the process as well.
Very good comment here, Carol. Let us take a look into it. There might be some legal concerns, issues, but that's a good suggestion. Perhaps if I don't have any answer for you right now, but perhaps we can bring an answer back for you during the next permit streamlining meeting. So
Okay.
whoever notes, please keep let's keep make sure that we keep all the copy of all the comments so we can respond to them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Carol. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. Now it's,
I think Terry's unmuted now.
oh, okay, Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to let David Ono know that I did try it, and yes, I could find the permits now. It's under documents section, and then in the permits box, I'm able to see the permits.
Okay,
Great, all right, thank you.
good. I'm glad we were able to help you, Terry. Bill, I think you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to respond back to the issue Carol was talking about. You might check with Mojave Desert. They actually, we get all our permits actually by email now. And it just comes out, it's just an auto notification and the final, they still mail them. I think there's a requirement that they have to still mail them, but we do get them via email now. And it's just the way their system's just set up, it comes out automatically.
Yeah, okay, no, not a problem. Thank you, Bill. Like I said, let us take a look into it. I mean, as part of our paperless permit processing, which was our phase 3 of our automation, all of the stuff would have been, would have been included in that process. But we're about a year, 2 years away from that process to be finalized. But meanwhile, let us take a look at it, talk with our compliance staff, not compliance staff, talk with our IM experts, and then we can talk also with our legal staff and see what we can do to get that going, if we can get it going. All right, is there any other hands raised, any questions or comments? So it's 11:40 and we have 2 more sections still to go, and we have the Zoom for another 20 minutes. I'm gonna ask David Hawk to go over our online filing updates.
Good morning, David Houck again, supervising engineer in the permit streamlining group. I'll try to speed this up so we can get to the next topic as well. Here to give a quick update on the online filing programs we have. If we could go to the next slide. As you might remember, in late 2018, we released 3 modules for issuing standard permits online. The news we have now is we've released 3 modules for the Rule 222 registration program for negative air machines, boilers, and commercial charbroilers. A little bit of background on the 222 registration program. It's typically equipment that might have a lower emission potential than equipment that is subject to standard permitting. The applicant provides a brief description of the permit and an emission estimate, and demonstrates they can comply with all the rules, state, federal, and local. And that information is received by us, and they in turn would receive a registration that has the equipment description, maybe some operating conditions, and maybe some record-keeping conditions. The 3 we did release, negative air machines, boilers, and commercial charbroilers. There's about a total of, I think, around 20 222 equipment categories. We released these 3 initially because they constitute almost 80% of all the Rule 222 registration filings. Real quick, the negative air machines are used in asbestos renovation or demolition projects. The boilers are, I guess, small size boilers between 1 and 2 million BTUs. Boilers over 2 million need a command and control permit, and those boilers and heaters under 1 million are exempt from registration and permitting. The commercial charbroilers are charbroilers used in commercial industries. and their associated control equipment. And that includes all the charbroilers regardless of their fuel type, whether it's electric, gas, wood, etc. Similar to the permitting online programs, the applicant registers first and then fills out some data online and receives all the correspondence of the filing, the payment receipt, and then the ultimate registration is all via email. So everything is 100% electronic in this case. Next slide, please. This is a kind of a summary of our online filing activity. You can see the permitting program started in late 2017. That activity is recently been dwarfed by the 222 activity. The permitting programs is a lot more complex, and in order for the program to issue a permit, we have to make some very conservative assumptions. So it's kind of narrowed the scope of applicants who might be able to get their permit directly online for automotive spray booths, dry cleaners, or gas stations. As you can see, the registrations just in the last several months, actually since we made this slide, we're approaching 100 registrations. Just in the last several weeks, we've gotten a lot. The negative air machines have, we did some outreach with the Rule 1403 group. That's the asbestos notification. They had a group of contacts. We sent an email blast to them, letting them know that they can now file their negative air machine registrations online as well. We have additional outreach planned for the dry cleaners. They have a compliance date coming up at the end of 2020. So that will be useful for them as well. And we've got other modules in the development phase that will be released in the same manner. We're going to start releasing the next group of the equipment that is most used. Next slide, please. What's in the future coming up down the pipeline? We've been continually releasing new versions of the programs that are out on the floor already, involving improvements to the user interface, the data input that the user might have, and some data cleanup on the backside for us. Those releases are just done occasionally, and the user, there's no announcement or anything. It's just a new version of the program that's released. We've also recently incorporated the new Rule 212 public notice guidelines that clarified the definition of emission increase. So that new policy guideline has been implemented into the online programs as well. Very shortly, maybe within the next couple months, we will have a new module for emergency IC engine registration. It's in the final stages of review. That involves several hundred certified IC engines that have been downloaded into our program. So the applicant will just choose their make and model number, and the program will fill in the rest of the information. One more big project that's been going on in the background, we have documented our as-is business process, if you will, for the life of an application from when it comes in the door all the way through the process till it reaches its final disposition and into our record system. We've documented every possible scenario that applications encounter as they come through our system, whether it's Title V, reclaim, public noticing, source testing, that kind of thing. This is going to be used to analyze where we have opportunities for improvements in efficiency and it will be the basis on which we will establish our paperless workflow project in the coming year or so. And speaking of the paperless workflow process, the COVID-19, maybe a small silver lining on the whole COVID-19 situation was when the shutdown was imminent. As mentioned, we've shifted to most of the engineers teleworking, and because of that, we have learned some good things and bad things on how we might want to do the permanent paperless workflow process through the last several months, just having the engineers work from home. I think we mentioned, scanning and making the files electronic. We've been able to use that experience and see which ways might be the most efficient for that type of thing. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions or comments.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions, comments? If not, I would really like us to go into the last section.
We just had one pop up.
Okay.
Sean too.
Hi, Sean. Can you please identify yourself, the facility or the organization you're associated with, and your question, please?
A question about the permit application signing. So with the COVID situation, a lot of my managers are working remotely, and I need him or her to sign the permit application. So are electronic signatures allowed for permit application signing?
So we try to address that in our compliance advisory. The compliance advisory, of course, has expired, and we are trying to figure out as an agency if we're going to continue allowing electronic signature. So stay tuned. We should come up with some sort of announcement, or we may just reach out to individual companies who have asked us for electronic signatures and let them know what the status of it is going to be.
Okay, this is Bill Thompson. We do accept fax copies of forms. So if that is helpful, then that is another avenue.
By fax, do you mean either fax or email images?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Sean. Any other questions? Seeing none.
With that, let's turn to permit processing handbook update. And Jason, the floor is yours.
All right, I will be cognizant of time. Good morning with the 8 minutes of morning we still have. So I will be presenting an update on the permit processing handbook efforts. Next slide, please. So the existing permit processing handbook is about to have its 31st birthday. So as you can imagine, it's quite dated, but it's also a very useful tool, but it just doesn't reflect a lot of the current rule requirements. As far as the development of the handbook, it did experience a slight pause as we shifted gears for COVID-19 and focused a lot on maintaining our abilities to process permits, but we have reinitiated those efforts, and we're going to kind of give you a sneak peek of what we've been working on. Just to explain what the existing handbook has, it covers 15 equipment categories, and you know, as a permit processing engineer, I utilized it, but it's becoming less and less useful as the years and our requirements change. But our organizational structure is such that different teams handle different industries, but we have equipment that is handled by all the teams, such as boilers and IC engines. So part of this effort, as we revisit the handbook, is to make sure we have consistency between engineering teams as they process the permit, and also as a training tool as new engineers come on board or engineers transfer into the group. It's a resource for them to get up to speed on the processes and how we process those permit applications. And also, most importantly, it is going to provide the public a resource to know what AQMD expects out of a permit application in order for us to accept and process it. Next slide, please. So as we assigned this project out to our engineering teams, is we defined a detailed outline as far as what this looks like to try and harmonize the process. But for those of you familiar with the existing handbook, you can tell we're really taking a deeper dive into what we're touching on. A lot of what we're presenting wasn't even touched on in the existing handbook, such as federal requirements, 212 noticing. Also, we're going to have introductory chapters, which I'll touch on later. But as rule requirements have grown and limits have come down, we really have this need to further dive and describe these requirements as we evaluate the permits. Still being aware that some of these items do have living documents themselves that change over time, but at least we can touch on Rule 1401 and BACT. I don't think 1401 existed when the existing handbook was developed. So next slide, please. So I mentioned our introductory chapters. We are going to go into more of an overview, which the original handbook didn't have, but it gives an insight into the life cycle of a permit application. And we also are going to dive into application acceptance requirements, not just submittal, but what do we need to accept this as a complete application in terms of facility categories and minor major sources and the different equipment categories and application types. Is it a modification? Is it a new construction? We're going to touch on all of these. And then also dive into an overview of common equipment and also go into data entry and everything an engineer does from beginning to end of the permit processing effort. Next slide, please. So here's a sample of our gas station chapter. Again, all of these are drafts, so we can't really release them at this time, but a substantial part of this has been completed, enough to kind of discuss what they'll contain. So in addition to our introductory chapters, we're going to touch on 5 pieces of equipment. Those are abrasive blasting, dry cleaners, emergency IC engines, spray booths, and gas stations. As you can tell from the table of contents for this chapter, we're really getting into the detail of what an engineer looks at during the evaluation. Next slide, please. So here's an initial section of the gas station section, and we're also going to have pretty detailed diagrams and figures in this that staff has been developing. I do actually want to step back and take a moment to thank staff and the teams that have worked on this. They've done a really great job to get us to that point. But these figures that they're putting together really helps develop a basic understanding of the equipment. And then the chapters will walk through the engineer or applicant, the various compliance checkpoints, as well as emission factors. If we're talking about gas stations, it gets into or will get into the executive orders, emission factors, various permit conditions, for various scenarios, such as if a gas station has a liquid condensate trap, what additional permit conditions does that have? Diving into like a piece of equipment, for example, that more people may be familiar with for spray booths. The existing chapter in the handbook is 20 pages. The draft chapter now has 80 pages, but it's going to dive into various types of coatings, liquid coatings, powder coatings, resins, what the different spray booths look like, PM and VOC control, Rule 1401 evaluations. So this is going to be a really robust handbook. It's hopefully going to be very useful for our processing engineers. Next slide, please. So I mentioned harmonizing chapters. This is to make sure we're getting sufficient detail and we're not skipping over any important items. But this is just a snapshot of one page of many pages of this table. But as staff is submitting the draft chapters to our administrative staff, we are reviewing it for content and making sure we're touching on all these high-level categories. Next step. So looking at our overall progress, we say we'd have drafts by third quarter. Those drafts are completed or in the final stages of being completed. And so as we go through those, making sure everything's harmonized, finalizing those, we are now looking ahead to the chapters that we will develop next and have initiated those efforts. So we are hoping to finalize these initial chapters or initial commitment by the end of the year. And as we move forward for our next task force meeting, we're hoping to provide you samples of these chapters. So I can pause here and take any questions on the handbook. I know I kind of sped through that with the time we have, but we can take any questions. Looks like Joe Hauer.
Great, thanks, Jason. Again, this sounds like a great undertaking, and it sounds like you do plan to publish these once they're complete.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, this is a tool not only for internally for staff, but also for the public, because we recognize that part of this process is, making sure applicants, companies know how or know what information to give us so we can process their permits.
Is the intent that this would eventually replace like the only other document that's been published, which is the 9-year-old, I think, CPP manual?
Yeah, I don't know if we can, discuss the CPP manual, but a lot of those aspects are being incorporated into this. I don't know, I'm not quite certain on the status of updating the CPP, but going through both as we do address things such as permit boundaries, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love to see you do an update, but it's gotten pretty far out, the risk assessment procedures that are discussed in there, even things like the Rule 216, appeal deadlines and things like that are not accurate. So it'd be nice to get it updated.
Yeah, we can touch base with staff on that and see how we integrate the two.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe, for the comment. That's really important.
Thank you. Yep. And then Judy has her figurative.
I put my hand up. Yeah, I want to say thanks very much. For Joe and I who teach at the UCs, the permitting, it'll be really nice to have that, and just for clarity and right up, we can, the CPP manual is really out of date. This will really help that, and that is really nice. I mean, we work hard at trying to tell people, explain how things work, but this will be super helpful. and to help with permitting, facilitation, and keeping things consistent. I can't say enough. And then it would be nice just to have a phased, it sounds like that's what you're doing, a phased draft review, because it'll be a lot and no need to wait till it's all done. So that would be great.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind as we dive through these chapters and finalize them. Thank you. And then David Rothbart is next.
Echo Judy's comments. It'd be very helpful to have it reviewed section by section. There's certain things like the wastewater industry has asked for, something to make the process easier. And one example is when you write a permit and you have very specific equipment descriptions that really have nothing to do with emissions. Then if I have to change like a pump or something has nothing to do with emissions, I have to go through a permit revision. It'd be nice to address that type of efficiency if possible. So if there's an opportunity to sit down with you and come up with those ideas, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, David. You've been around as long as I have been, so you know the process as well as I do. The reason what we put those additional information in the permit was because so that there's no question when the facility is being visited by our compliance staff. So there's no question that whether that piece of equipment should have been on the permit or is that not part of the permit. So it makes their job a lot easier. But I can see your point of view saying that, okay, now that you put it on there, every time you want me to change it, I have to put an admin application. So that's a really good comment, and let us take a look into it.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Terry.
Looks like Terry.
Terry, you're still muted.
Terry. Terry, if you can unmute yourself.
Mute.
There we go. Oh, just pop back on.
Yourself again.
Try that one more time.
Mute. Hello.
All right, go ahead.
You can hear me. Good. Yeah, so this permit handbook, if it's going to be, so it's going to be available to public. Would it also contain like your permit templates for some of the chapters that you mentioned? So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For each of these, we will be developing, I think in the overview section as well as the individual sections, it will be going through, permit evaluation template.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah. It won't be able to cover every detailed situation, but we're hoping it's enough to really streamline our process.
Okay, any other questions or concerns associated with the presentation that Jason just made?
Don't know if David Rothbart still has his hand raised from before or.
No, I didn't take my hand down.
All right. And at this point, no further questions.
All right, are there any questions from the committee members or the staff attending, or the folks attending, not staff, folks attending?
Is there a general public comment period?
Right, so now we're going to open it up to general public comment. Are there any comments from public? Okay, I don't see any hands on. Jason, do you see any hands on?
I do not see any hands.
Okay, well, sorry for going a little bit over the allotted time. Thank you for your participation. I hope you all stay safe and we'll be in touch. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your patience as we work through this.
Thanks to everybody that put this together. Have a good day.
Thank you.